Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtati. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Nama Pankajanaಭಾಯ Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangrahuri. Hare Krishna. So we are reading today from Canto 3, which is the status quo, chapter 22, which is the marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. And today we'll be reading text 5. So we'll get started. Tava sandarshanad eva chinna me sarva samshaya yat swayam bhagavan pritya dharmam ahari rakshisho. Do the word for word. Tava, your, sandarshanat, by sight, eva, only, chinna, resolved, me, may, my, sarva samshaya, all doubts, yat, inasmuch as, swayam, personally, Bhagavan, your lordship, pritya, lovingly, dharmam, duty, aha, explained, ridakshisho, of a king anxious to protect his subjects. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. Verse, now I have resolved all my doubts simply by meeting you. For your lordship has very kindly and clearly explained the duty of a king who desires to protect his subjects. So, purport. Manu described herewith the result of seeing a great saintly person. Lord Chaitanya says that one should always try to associate with saintly persons, because if one establishes a proper association with a saintly person, even for a moment, one attains all perfection. Somehow or other, if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, then the entire mission of one's human life is fulfilled. In our personal experience, we have actual proof of this statement of Manu. Once we had the opportunity to meet Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. And on first sight, he requested this humble self to preach his message in the Western countries. There was no preparation for this, but somehow or other he desired it. And by his grace, we are now engaged in executing his order, which has given us a transcendental occupation and has saved and liberated us from the occupation of material activities. Thus, it is actually a fact that if one meets a saintly person, completely engaged in transcendental duties and achieves his favor, then one's life mission becomes complete. What is not possible to achieve in thousands of lives can be achieved in one moment if there is an opportunity to meet a saintly person. It is therefore enjoined in Vedic literature that one should always try to associate with saintly persons and try to dissociate oneself from the common man. Because by one word of a saintly person, one can be liberated from material entanglement. A saintly person has the power, because of his spiritual advancement, to give immediate liberation to the conditioned soul. Here, Manu admits that all his doubts are now over, because Kardama has very kindly described the different duties of individual souls. We'll say the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutabadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavansva Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamnitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvaiva Cha Patitanam Papanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapadaswamiti Namane Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyava Paschatya Deshatari Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivashadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam discussion. I feel fortunate to have an opportunity to read the Bhagavatam. I'm, of course, not qualified at all. I just do this service for my purification. I'll start with seeking the blessings of my Guru Maharaj and all of you wonderful devotees, so that I may speak something of some value. So this chapter continues to talk about the meeting of Kartama Muni and Swayambhava Manu, right? And if we go further back as to why is it that they are meeting, we know that Vidura had actually inquired from Maitreya Muni about Swayambhava Manu's dynasty and what was their contribution to populating the material world, right? Now, Manu, of course, had several children, but Maitreya Muni starts by talking about Manu's daughter, Devahuti, and how she married Kardama Muni and, helped with that, big um, instruction of populating the world. So, Kardama Muni too was commanded by Brahma to create progeny in order to, so that was his, from Brahma, direct instruction from Brahma to create progeny to populate the world. Now, in order to achieve that, what did Kardama Muni do? He started by performing austerities and worshipping, the Lord on the river banks of River Saraswati. And he did this for 10,000 years, right? We kind of studied about that in the previous chapter. Now, his ask was, he was seeking a wife who would be able to fulfill all desires in married life. Right? Now, the austerities that he performed pleased the Lord so much that he appeared in, himself, the personality of Godhead appeared himself in front of Kardama Muni. And we had studied about, the beautiful description of the Lord in his yellow garment and the lotus-like face, etc. So the Lord informed Kardama Muni that he has already arranged to fulfill his heart's desire, and that Swayambhuva Manu was going to come with his wife Shatarupa, and they were going to deliver their very qualified daughter, Devahuti, to Kardamamuni. So shortly after the Lord, gives his promise or benediction, Swayambhava Manu arrives at Kardamamuni's hermitage. And the last few weeks, we've been hearing this beautiful description of their meeting and their interaction, right? How Manu, who is the emperor of the world, and presumably the owner of vast opulences, servants, elephants, horses, you name it, he bows down to Kardama Muni, right? And Kardama Muni is in very austere settings, right? He lives in a cottage of dried leaves, hardly has any possessions. And also, Manu had come to, offer him. I mean, he was going to be his son-in-law. So even from that stature, he was kind of lower in a way. Yet, because Kardama Muni is a sage, a Brahmin, a saintly person, and not only that, he had pleased the Lord. He had had darshan of the Lord. So the emperor of the world bows down to Kardama Muni, right? Because he's so qualified. And Kardama Muni, in return, he receives Manu with great honor, and he starts glorifying Manu. He says, you are the embodiment of the protecting energy of Hari, and that you're the representative of the Lord. You're upholding the Varnashram system, which was established by the Lord, and protecting the world from inauspiciousness and irreligion and so on. So Kardama talks for at length, glorifies Manu. So Manu, and this we heard in yesterday's talk, that Manu was felt a little embarrassed and overwhelmed, right, by all this glorification, and so he reciprocates also by glorifying Kardama. And he talks about the very important position of the Brahmanas, right, which is the Lord's heart. And he says that Kshatriyas have been created as arms of the Lord to protect the Brahmana. Like arms. If something is getting thrown at you, Brahmanas, of course, heart or the head. Right? We use our arms to protect our head, and right. So from that perspective too. So having said all that, Manu then comes to this verse, today's verse, where he says that, you can see, now I have resolved all my doubts simply by meeting you. For your lordship has very kindly and clearly explained the duty of a king who desires to protect his subjects. So simply by, this is a short meeting, right? It's not like they've been meeting for a while and Kardama Muni has been preaching. But simply by this short meeting, his doubts have been resolved. Chinname sarva samshaya. Right? So Manu here, and this is what Prabhupada says in the purport as well, is that Manu is talking about the result of associating with a saintly person, even just one association. And Srila Prabhupada connects this to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said in his very famous verse, right? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastre Koy, Labhamatra Sadhu Sange, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that even by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. And what is that Labhamatra? Labhamatra is actually 1/11th of a second. In 1/11th of a second association with a sadhu, one can attain perfection. And actually, this chapter, which is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22, chapter 22, has several other verses, along those same lines, and really beautiful verses. This is another one of text 49. It says that by associating with a devotee, one awakens his faith in devotional service to Krishna. Because of devotional service, one's dormant love for Krishna awakens, and thus one's material conditioned existence comes to an end. Thus one's material conditioned existence comes to an end. And Prabhupada talks about a similar thing, right? He talks about how because of this instruction from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he transformed or converted from material occupation to a transcendental occupation. So Prabhupada actually, just to continue on the purport, he says that somehow or other, if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, then the entire mission of one's human life is fulfilled. Right? And then he talks about his own experience, right? His personal experience with Vishnupad Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, where on the first sight he requested this humble self to preach his message in the Western countries. And he says there was no preparation for this, but somehow or other he desired it. And by his grace, we are now engaged in executing his order. He says, which has given us a transcendental occupation. Right? Given us a transcendental occupation and saved us and liberated us from the occupation of material activities. And so instructive, so heart-touching in a way. So talking about that first meeting of Srila Prabhupada with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we know, that meeting, right? But just to, reminisce a little bit, Srila Prabhupada at that time was a young man. He was, recently married. He had children. I think one child or something at that time. But he had graduated from the prestigious Scottish Church College in Kolkata. And it was the same college where Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose also had studied, was a senior. And Srila Prabhupada himself was quite involved with the freedom movement, right? He was following Gandhiji. And in protest of the British occupation, I think he had refused or returned his graduation certificate, right? So he was, a very strong nationalist at that time. And in addition to that, we also know that Prabhupada did not have a very good opinion of sadhus as such, right? He had seen his father, who was very pious, invite sadhus to their homes, and he would treat them with a lot of respect and honor. But Prabhupada, at a very young age, saw that these so-called sadhus would cheat his father of money. Right? And so Prabhupada was, very firm in his conviction. He didn't even want to meet Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, right? His friend somehow convinced him and took him there. And when he went there, in the very first meeting, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had made such an impression, right, that Prabhupada's, course of life, his whole thinking kind of changed in that first meeting. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur asked him to preach in English in the Western world. And of course, Prabhupada's first response was that we are a subjugated nation. Who's going to listen to us? Who's going to pay any attention to our philosophy? But I mean, which is so true, right? I mean, we know of the signs that were in all over India that were put up by the British, which said dogs and Indians not allowed, right? In any of the elite places or clubs or things like that. So yeah, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's response to that was so profound that Prabhupada, from that young age, made, the instruction of preaching in the Western world his guiding light, right? And for the rest of his life, that's what he worked on. And, that's And he, of course, what he achieved is so, so amazing. And so all this happened by this short meeting that he had, that initial meeting that he had with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The impact, was so magnanimous, so huge. So that's what Prabhupada is referring to in the purport. And of course, not only, the cascading effect, right, of that meeting impacted so many hundreds of thousands of lives, our lives, all of us that are gathered here today, our lives were changed by that, starting from that meeting. So, so that's why Prabhupada says in the next line that it is actually, what is not possible to achieve in thousands of lives can be achieved in one moment if there is an opportunity to meet a saintly person. Now, of course, we know that our Prabhupada himself, he himself with these short meetings, he converted so many lives, right? Every time, we hear his disciples speaking. Recently, we had the good fortune of hearing Shamsundar Prabhu. You hear that how amazing Srila Prabhupada's, association was, his touch. So many young girls and boys, with so many different plans. I mean, there were some hippies, some were students headed to, various colleges. His Holiness Ramapad Swami Maharaj, for example, was headed to a medical school. And then there were others that were just enjoying life or, being rebels against their parents or against the society at that time. One Maharaj that I was, listening to his lecture mentioned that he had applied to a music school and had gotten accepted to a music school in Europe. And he had worked really hard to get a scholarship, So he got accepted and was about to go. And then he met Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. And he says immediately, it was a big decision, but he decided to follow Srila Prabhupada and take to Krishna consciousness. And of course, he's still there. He's lecturing and, he's kind of passing that on. So all of these people, right, that were, immersed in various materialistic plans and occupations, somehow like magic, they surrendered to Srila Prabhupada. How amazing is it, right? And of course, if you listen to them, they talk about, like Shamsundar Prabhu was saying, that Prabhupada was just so beautiful to look at. His smile. I mean, he was so effulgent. If you think about, what is it that changed these people? And, it's, of course, difficult for our small, tiny brains to fathom. But, he was just so effulgent. It's like it's come from another world. And of course, the very important thing is he cleared all of their doubts. Right? People had so many questions, starting from basic questions to philosophical, to some very funny, silly questions as well. But Prabhupada, if you listen to his like morning walk lectures or his letters, he just clarified, all of their doubts. Just as Manu is saying, Chunna Sarva Samshaya, Chunna Me Sarva Samshaya. And so Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, thus it is actually a fact that if one meets a saintly person who's completely engaged in transcendental duties and somehow achieves his favor, then one's life mission becomes complete. And of course, there are many such examples. Narad Muni, for example, right, in these short meetings has perfected so many lives. Some very prominent ones are like Dhruva Maharaj, like the 5-year-old Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Narad Muni himself in his prior life, when he was just about 5 years old, the son of a insignificant maidservant, in association with the sages, who lived in their vicinity for 4 months, um, completely transformed, right? And he became the great Narad Muni. In fact, so much so that, at that young age, when his mother died from a snake bite, a 5-year-old, any 5-year-old would be completely lost, right? I mean, mother is the only shelter that he has, and, it's gone. And what would he do? But Narad Muni's reaction was completely different. He was like, well, this is a good thing. This was his reaction, that now there are no more bonds to tie him down. And he felt he could focus on the higher pursuit of realizing the Lord. So, so that's why Prabhupada says that it is therefore enjoined that in the Vedic literature that one should always try to associate with saintly persons and try to disassociate oneself from the common man. Because by one word of a saintly person, one can be liberated from material entanglement. So this reference to common man and material entanglement is, another important thing to ponder on. From NOI, we know that, Jana Sangascha Lolyamcha Sadbir Bhakti Vinashyati, right? And so in general, we are very, we have to kind of become careful, right, about associating with worldly people, given up all the partying and whatever, shopping and whatnot that we used to do before coming to ISKCON. But, just from a very practical aspect, there's one thing that's almost kind of crept up on us, as far as material entanglement and association goes, and that is our smartphones. With Facebook, YouTube, even if you will discount Facebook, but these shorts and reels, right? And of course, all of this can be used for spirituality, listening to classes, kirtan, etc. But in all of these, there are so many other things that often just grab our attention, unknowingly almost, especially with these shorts, right? And they're, short. So you think, okay, let me just take a quick look. And then it kind of takes over. For me, in recent times, it was Indian politics. I mean, the foreign minister, right, Jaishankar, he's really been presenting India well in international forums, right? And, I kind of saw one or two, and now his shorts keep coming up on YouTube. And because it's a short clip, I'm like, okay, let me see how how he spoke in a G20 summit, or when this Pakistani media person questioned him and whatnot. And before you know it, you're like looking at, and YouTube keeps prompting you with it. And it's like so much time wasted. And worse than that, it's kind of occupying a place in our mind, right? So it's so important to be careful, and not find ourselves getting entangled in something else now, right? So, coming back to this verse, I mean, all of the examples that we were talking about so far, like Dhruva, Narada, Kardamamuni, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, all of these were short encounters which changed lives. And if you think of ourselves for a minute, what is our situation, right? We actually are so fortunate, and we have so much, of Prabhupada's association through his books, his disciples, right, our Guru Maharajas. Through them, the mercy is, flowing towards us, right? And it's like, what great fortune we have, really, right, of association of saintly persons, and just flowing through. Of course, it's up to us, to firstly receive the mercy that's coming to us, and not ignore it or miss it completely. Or if by some good fortune we receive it, that we don't lose it, right? So we must hold on to it, and then, to the extent possible, pass it on to others that we come across. As Prabhupada says, our gurus say, be a live wire that carries that mercy from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, from Srila Prabhupada, from our gurus, and somehow, try to touch other lives as well, to the extent that we can, right? And when our gurus, or when the senior devotees are here in town, they carry the bhakti in their hearts, right? We must try to, I must try to get as much association as possible, because I'm sure we all experience it. It's like a booster shot, right? When they're here, it just energizes us, and somehow for some time, our chanting gets a little better. Of course, depending on my ability to receive and save up some of that mercy. But yeah, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Guru Ashtaka has, we sing this every day. He says, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, Yasya prasada nagati kutopi. So, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. It is by the mercy of the Guru, of the spiritual master, that one can get Bhagavat Prasad, right? The mercy of Krishna. And on the other hand, Yasya Prasad, without that grace of the Guru, because we haven't qualified ourselves to get that grace of the Guru, there is no gati, nagati kutopi. There's nowhere to go. This particular verse is like just so direct, and so it is, again, by the mercy of these saintly personalities, that the spiritual knowledge can awaken in our hearts, right? And slowly give us that happiness that we are seeking, the love for Krishna. So I would pray that we may sincerely seek the association and mercy of Srila Prabhupada and our gurus, and somehow get engaged in that transcendental occupation that Prabhupada is talking about. And gradually, or if there is, if by some mercy, quickly disassociate ourselves from all these material occupations that we are involved in, and eventually make our lives perfect as well. So I'll end with this. Thank you very much. Sorry if I misspoke anything. Please add or correct.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Krishna
Mataji.
Yeah.
Such a wonderful class, thought-provoking, and there's so many, what do you say, gold nuggets or even treasures that you spoke about. Two things that I just, I don't want to take a lot of time. Two things that stand out as one is, the business of Prajapatis, how Kardama Muni did the austerities, and he, was, going to get Devahuti as his bride. If you just go by the general thought, what is so great about the Prajapati business? You indulge in procreation activity indiscriminately, pardon me for being so graphic, indiscriminately, and you have a bunch of population, so we saw that initially Lord Shiva did that and it had a problem, and then So there was a design that was developed, and uh, that is why we had these Prajapatis who very carefully cultivated, intellectuals of various sorts, having various skills, who could populate and bring up the civilization. It's not like what Darwin was talking about, that we have these, cave dwellers and we have these tribesmen hunting. Actually, these are the people who didn't want to follow the given path, the Vedic path, and thus they went into those things. So that becomes very clear as we are going through these chapters, particularly in the third canto. The second one that struck me when you were speaking about was, the British, this thing that they would put everywhere, dogs and Indians are not allowed. So for this particular, outrageous behavior, different leaders and people reacted differently to it. Some people protested in a non-violent way. Some people, took up the cudgels and all of that. But look at the Vedic style of doing it. The Vedic style of doing it was, sending preachers and teachers to go and educate them. Yeah, it'll take time, but that is what Narada Muni did with, be it Valmiki or with Mugrari. So we find so many of these examples in our shastras where instead of taking up, of course there are cases where you have to do that, but then you also have to educate. Otherwise, it will become like the elephant taking a bath.
Yeah.
You do, we've seen that happen in our own history. We had repeated invasions and we let them go, they would come back. Repeated invasions. And what happened? It actually became like an elephant bath. So I'll just stop there, Mataji. Wonderful class. So many thought provoking, so well presented. Thank you so much, Mata.
Thank you, Prabhu. And thank you for those points. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's reply to Prabhupada, right, when he talked about the fact that we are subjugated, who will listen to us, was so profound because he said that this message is eternal, right? This is the spiritual message, and it is not influenced by any material condition. Today I'm an Indian, tomorrow I may be British or maybe an animal, but this message of God transcends all of that. And so that the education, I mean, that's what if we look back at what how did we kind of change as well. It is this message, right, that knowledge that we are a soul. This, it's not this body. So absolutely right, Prabhu, that education of this message, which somehow I mean, even in India has not reached, so many people, right? Hardly a dent it has made so far, but obviously it's growing. Um, but yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Good question. Anyone else have any
Hare
points
Krishna.
or questions?
Thank you so much. Such an honest class, and vulnerabilities are in one sense it's a strength in Krishna consciousness, and you've shown that today. I've been one thing I've been meditating the last few days for my own self where I am is uh, Krishna consciousness is such an, I mean, there are external components to it, but really it is just what's in our heart. And we can speak in a flowery language, attractive language, do so many things externally, but really, Krishna consciousness isn't just that. It is what is in our heart. Like, Prabhu just brought up the point about Prajapatis. Externally, the action can be anything. Internally, what mood are we doing that in? That is important, right? And personally, I think that's where the struggle is for me. Like where is the consciousness? Where is that mood of service? And anyway, so you've inspired me in many ways, many points that you brought up. But I think for me, the takeaway from what you shared is this honesty, bringing honesty into this relationship with Krishna. And yeah, that's our journey forward. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, you inspire me in so many ways. So thank you. Thank you for being there, being my, friend, god sister, being there. Thank you so much. Okay, we will stop. We're 10 minutes over. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Where do I exit from?
Mataji, if everyone leaves, automatically it will close. Probably Prabhu has made you the,
Yeah,
what do you call?
yeah, I
So
thought
if you
that.
leave, it will close.
Achha, if I leave it.